And we're going to do a quick, I think now, presentation looking at what's happening in the Diploma Programme. I think one of the interesting pieces that may come out for you here is also how you can be part of any change that happens in the diploma at any time. It's not just about the IB doing something to you or doing something to the students or to the schools. We really need you to be part of it. So we'll look at how we do what we do, and then how you can be part of it, and then what's going on at the moment. There's some fairly exciting and interesting pieces. Then of course, if there's time at the end, we can have more question and answer. We can discuss more about the upcoming review of the whole programme, because I really would like to hear your ideas about it. In case you're wondering where we live, the curriculum development area, the programme development team is in The Hague, in the centre there of this particular map. We are the programme development team. We moved there in 2010 and 11 from Cardiff, and our assessment colleagues are in Cardiff. So we're responsible for the programme development side of things, they're responsible for the exams. The way it really works is that during curriculum review of any subject, we review the content of the guide. We will suggest changes to components. For example, the internal assessment, we may redesign a component so that instead of producing an essay, it's a presentation or something like that. And then once the guide is published, it's over to our colleagues in Cardiff, who then run the assessment year after year after year. And we monitor it, and if there's any changes needed, we work with our colleagues in Cardiff to change it. But essentially, we look at the curriculum side. Once the curriculum is being taught, we're then looking at the next one. So this is how we work. Has anyone here ever been involved in the curriculum review process in our office? One? Yeah, 4 people. As I say, we publish a guide, generally around about January, February, March. That would be what we consider the beginning of the 7th year of review. We have a 7-year review cycle. Our review process has recently been audited by NFER, which is a UK-based organisation, the National Foundation for Educational Research. And they actually found that we have an excellent review process. They obviously suggested some changes. But this is essentially what we do. They said it's a good process. 7 years, they think, is about the right length. The only other system that has anything similar, apparently, is South Korea, which reviews their curriculum every 7 to 10 years. In most instances, curriculum is reviewed on a cycle of government change. So they think that we're quite fortunate to be free from any government influence in that sense. So the first 2 years, as soon as that guide is published, the first 2 years then are spent researching for the next one. So the Sciences, for example, have just published, 2014, Sciences have just published. The Sciences team is now researching for the guide that will be published in 2021, for first assessment in 2023. So if you can imagine that challenge, you're researching for something that will be first assessed in 2023, final assessment 2030. So that's one of the challenges, is as part of the research, is how do you future-proof it? And it comes back to the point you just made. You've got to keep it at a conceptual level. You cannot hang your research and your thinking for a particular syllabus to something that may turn out to be a fad or a piece of content that was relevant in 2014 but isn't relevant in 2023, 2027, 2030. So how do you future-proof? And that means you have to keep it at a conceptual level. And that is part of what will steer us in a more conceptual direction, as well as the influence of PYP and MYP and our approaches to teaching and learning projects. So the first 2 years are research, looking at what's going on in the world, talking to universities, surveying schools, surveying universities, surveying alumni. And this is one area where I think you could help us very much. If you have some familiarity, for example, with syllabus materials in this part of the world that may be in languages that we can't access in our office, because we have a number of nationalities in our office, but I don't think in our team we have, for example, an Arabic speaker. So if there are national curriculums from this part of the world that would be helpful as we review mathematics, language A, physics, you name it, if you're able to help us and say, look, we think there's a really good curriculum in this country or that country, we think you should look at it, then please do let us know. My email address is at the end of this presentation. So please email me and let us know. We think the IB should be looking here for some inspiration. And we need that, because at the moment we are a little bit restricted to information that we can read in generally English, French, Spanish, German, Dutch, and so on. So any help there would be great. Once that research phase is over for 2 years, we then go into a period of about 3 years looking at the curriculum review meetings, and that's where some of you will be familiar. We'll typically have 2 meetings per year for 3 years, and the curriculum manager will work with teachers from all over the world, all sorts of different backgrounds, to start to develop firstly the aims and objectives, then develop a new assessment model, and it builds up and up and up. So that by about year 5, you've got the beginnings of the new guide. Then in year 5, 6, the curriculum manager rewrites the guide, starts to develop teacher support materials, and then by year 7, that guide is published. The subject-specific seminars begin, and as you can see, this is how it looks in general. And then we go into it again. We go into research, and so on and so on. And that's how the 7-year review cycle works. And how you can help, as I said, if you have curriculum materials from this part of the world that would really help us, please do share. Also, we put notices out in coordinators' notes saying anybody wants to be part of curriculum review, please let us know. So anybody in your schools, any teachers from your schools who want to be part of any curriculum review, we really would value their input. Okay, and you'll see notices all the time in coordinators' notes. As we just discussed, I thought about 3% of coordinators read coordinators' notes. It's actually about 98% read coordinators' notes and value them. So I was pleased to hear that, but I wasn't pleased because I was hoping I'd get out of that job. But unfortunately, coordinators' notes are very popular, so obviously we'll continue with them. So, as I say, we go through that whole process, and at the end of it comes out a guide. These are the guides that are for first teaching 2014. Obviously, you'll have just started with these. Hopefully, they're going okay. But what's quite interesting with these now is that they're out. The subject-specific seminars were earlier this year. What our team is now doing is also monitoring what's going on. And one of the biggest phases is at 2016, first assessment. Obviously, we'll get a load of data at that point, and it's at that point where you say, right, these components are working, or this style of questioning is working, and Loiki here, who's been involved with, for how many years have you been involved with examining? 10? 10, I think, maybe more. Loiki's been involved with being a chief examiner and so on for a long time. This is the point where we work with our assessment colleagues and say, right, that internal assessment, it's not quite worked. And you'll remember, for example, within languages A and B, there's been all sorts of problems with the written assignment and all these areas. And it's like trying to fix a plane while it's already in flight. There have been amendments made. I don't think they're ideal, to be honest, but they're a bit better than they were. And hopefully not such a hassle for the schools. So at the second year point, we can actually use data to start to make any amends if they're necessary. One would hope that they're not, because part of the review process now is that any new assessment component will be trialled. That wasn't always the case before. Now it is, so hopefully we wouldn't have to fix the plane while it's in flight. The courses for first teaching next year, it's a much quieter year. One, it means less hassle for the school. 2, I think less cost, because of course we realise that once you have to start training so many teachers, if you look at that list, that's quite costly in terms of attendance at subject-specific seminars. This list certainly is less horrific in terms of professional development costs for schools. But sometimes it's the case where you have a group review, all the sciences will come out at once. All the mathematics courses will come out at once, 2018, all the languages B. This is one reason we've staggered languages A and B, so that they're not all coming out at once, is to reduce the impact on languages departments. Now this is an exciting area. Who's heard of school-based syllabuses? Okay, maybe about half of you. This is something that I really love talking about. I often talk to people about the SBSs, and they look at me blankly and say, what's an SBS? We have 12 of them, as you can see. And this is where we can become really innovative in partnership with schools. This is where a lot of new courses come from. The Global Politics course that's going mainstream in the next year emerged from 3 SBSs. So this is like a nursery ground for new courses, if you like. A school suddenly thinks, there's a real demand in our school for this. For example, at the moment, we've got a lot of interest in robotics. A lot of schools are talking to us about robotics. There's 3 schools talking to us about food technology. And they say, we want to do this as a group for a science course. So we say, okay, great, let's do it then. So they write the course with our guidance. The school writes the course based on the other sciences guidance. They put the course together, and then we help them to get it right, and then we run the assessment. So the IB runs the assessment of it. It's proper IB assessment with the proper IB quality assurance assessment. And then we start to advertise it so that more people can actually, I hope he's not taking pictures of empty seats. Start running around, use up all the seats. We then try to ensure that more schools take it on, because one of the criteria for having an SBS accepted is that more schools will do it. So, for example, you've got up there Turkey in the 20th century. Just yesterday we approved the 28th school to teach that. That's essential in that particular country, because for the national system, they are required, students are required to do that. So they do that as part of their individuals and societies. The same is true with Chile and the Pacific Basin. For Chile, if that course didn't exist, there'd be no DP schools in Chile. So that's important. Brazilian social studies as well. So Turkey in the 20th century, that's 28 schools. Art history is 27 schools. Astronomy is now, I think, 12 schools. But they can grow and grow and grow. So if you see a need in your school environment to suggest a course that students may love, then by all means do so. Just email me and we can sort it out. So what is happening that's new? Global politics, as you know, has emerged from 3 of the SBSs. Yes, go on.
Can the course be in any language or?
It can be. For example, we're working with schools in Kazakhstan at the moment to do a course in Kazakhstan in the contemporary world, and that will be taught in Kazakh. Very importantly that it's in Kazakh. That's a national requirement. President Nazarbayev is quite clear that they all need to do that. At the moment, those DP students are doing their 6 DP subjects, and they're doing the compulsory Kazakhstan and the Contemporary Society course that all kids must do. So we said to them, well, why don't you write an SBS and replace their geography or history or whatever and do it there? So they are. And I think a lot of their students will take it up. So yeah, any language. Global politics has just started, and this is a good example of our changing view of approaches to teaching and learning, in fact. It's very much based around a conceptual approach. It's got 3 pillars, if you like: the concept, the content, and the skills. Very much more of an MYP style approach, and you'll see it in the guide. It's very explicit about the key concepts, and we are gradually, quietly using phrases like key concepts, which of course has been around in the PYP for a long time, and more recently in the MYP. What's also interesting there is trying to do something that was alluded to a little bit this morning, aside from the relationships that teachers have with the great teachers, is how can you develop a curriculum that will really engage students and motivate, and it's the connection with real life, the authentic situations. And what the Global Politics course tries to do is to provide through the internal assessment far more realistic challenges for students. It's not just write an essay about. They're engaging activities that are more along the lines of what you would do in real life. And in the high level, it ends up with an oral presentation that is then assessed, rather than here's another essay to do. So hopefully, showing that we understand that students can demonstrate their understanding in different ways, but in more realistic ways that may be more motivating. We talked a little bit earlier about the DP student workload study. We're piloting the study at the moment. This comes about because, as we were discussing earlier, we have so many anecdotal tales of students being killed, harmed, destroyed by the Diploma Programme. And we have many anecdotal stories of students who, they find it very easy and they carry on playing the trumpet at top level and playing for the national football team. So you've got everything at either end of the spectrum. So the time is right to actually find out what is the truth, what are the issues. So we've just launched the pilot. We contacted 100 schools in 6 countries. The reason it's taken us quite a while to get this off the ground is there's a lot of ethical issues around surveying young people. And every country, every state within every country seems to have a different law. For example, in the States, we've had all sorts of problems. We have to survey the US as one of our countries because there's so many students there. And it seems that even every district within every state has a different law about surveying students. So it hasn't been easy. We approached 100 schools, about 60 or so have responded. And we're now surveying, right now as we speak, about 4,000 students. And it's a very long survey that will try to see if there's a relationship between workload and stress, and if there's a relationship then between the stress and student well-being. Because, you know, some stress isn't a bad thing, but is it stress that is causing problems with their relationships? And the survey is really detailed. It will look at issues like if the kid's taking a more science route or a more arts route or a more social sciences route, how does that impact their stress and their well-being? And their relationships with friends, with parents, their self-image. It's really very detailed, and we'll get an awful lot of information from it, and that should help. Students will be surveyed now, beginning of their year 1. There will be a school survey in January so that the coordinators can actually input, because this is where we can start to match up. Is it internal deadlines set by the school that are a problem, or is it the deadlines set by the IB that are the problem? And also to back up, there might be some dodgy claims from the students, and this will, you know, check if they're true or not. Then there'll be another survey at the end of the year 1, and then another survey at the end of year 2. So you put that together as a 2-year study, and then we go into, that would be the pilot. We'll have tested whether everything works, whether the survey works. Then we go into the full-scale one, where we hope to include about 50,000 students per year. And we hope to be able to do this year on year, so that if we then make changes to the programme aimed at reducing stress levels and improving well-being, then we can monitor whether they actually are or not. That's the idea. Then we're looking at new courses. As I say, the role of school-based syllabus is very important. But other areas to look at, and do they have a place as a course within the DP, or a part of the DP within the core, or a component? What should we do? Has anyone heard of the Big History course? This is a really exciting one. If you, a bit like some of us, if you go to David Jones's presentation later, he's head of curriculum in the Diploma for Sciences and Maths. Big History is his big, big passion, and he's been working a lot on this. It looks at the history of the Earth from the Big Bang all the way through till today. So there's a lot of science, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of development, economics. It's extremely interdisciplinary. And that's what's so exciting about it, is it's very interdisciplinary. We would like to see more interdisciplinary work within the Diploma Programme. So that's something that we're investigating at the moment, and we've been working on it, and we've just we've developed some trial units that are being trialled with MYP students. It fits actually beautifully with the MYP, and then we'll see how it works with the MYP, then see how we can roll it out. If I have my way with it, we'll produce a lot of nice online courses and make them freely available to anybody. I would actually have them available to any IB school, or indeed any school, full stop. But let's see if we get there. That's sometimes what you dream doesn't happen, or sometimes it does. We're looking at the role of sustainability. We've certainly, we've worked recently to get sustainability concepts into the economics guide that's coming up, into geography, ESS, and design technology. So these are things that should be appearing more and more. I don't want to see students coming through the Diploma Programme and managing to avoid looking at economic and environmental sustainability. It's got to happen. We're also looking at the idea of music technology. We're reviewing the music guide at the moment. It's quite traditional, the music guide. high-level music students actually write 7 essays, would you believe? We've recently managed to chop that down to 6, but they write more essays in that subject than they do in any other subject. But how do we represent changes in the way people produce music these days? Is it worth having a music technology course, or should that just be part of the music course? So that's part of our investigation. And then we're looking at, we have at the moment computer science and ITGS. Are they the right courses? I know things are changing very, very quickly. Should we have completely different courses? Should we combine those courses? Do we need an extra course? Should we have a course in coding? Should we be producing a technology course that's specific for the IBCC or IBCP as it now is? All these are ideas that we're working on, and in the next 3 or 4 years you'll see some changes in how we look at that. Should we be incorporating more digital wisdom within the core, for example? This is one of my personal jobs, is to rewrite Diploma Programme from principles into practice, something I thought I'd managed to escape from after doing 2 MYP from principles into practice. I hoped I got rid of it for another few years, but no. This has been revised. For those of you who've known any of my work over the years in the MYP, you'll find there's an awful lot of copy and paste from the MYP from principles into practice. And I don't apologise for that at all. I have been accused of introducing lots of MYP stuff into the DP, and I don't apologise for that either. We've got a huge section in there on approaches to teaching and learning, which is, of course, very much inspired by PYP and MYP. We're now looking at the role of the librarian in there. It's a piece that was written for the MYP document. It's now in the DP. The role of outdoor education in terms of character education and components of CAS potentially. And we've revamped the academic honesty piece. And this will be published in April. It is essentially what was there before, but with some significant updates. Right, the big project that we've been working on over the last couple of years is approaches to teaching and learning. In 2012, all of the IB's programme models were changed to look far more aligned. Now, it's all well and good to produce programme models that look aligned. The next thing is to make sure that they actually are aligned. And the first thing that ever happened in 2006 and 2007 was that the learner profile was put into each of the programme models and now goes across each programme. Obviously, it started with PYP, but now it goes across all. But the next key piece is the insertion of approaches to teaching and approaches to learning, right in the very centre. And of course, it's no coincidence that they are the pieces that are next to learn. And I think that this is potentially the most powerful way to encourage the transition between MYP and DP, and between PYP and the MYP, is having a common language and a common approach to the ATL, the approaches to teaching. So, 5 categories of ATL skills. You can see them there. Do you know where these category names came from? PYP. They came from PYP. In the PYP, these 5 categories are currently known as, do you know what they're known as currently? They're currently in the PYP known as the transdisciplinary skills. So these are the transdisciplinary skills, and the MYP has adopted them, although the MYP always had approaches to learning skills, ATL skills. Then, of course, we have the new section is approaches to teaching. This is potentially transformative for the Diploma Programme. For the first time, the Diploma Programme, not just talking about what is taught, but how it's taught. And this is really important. As the speaker said this morning, it's how it's taught to motivate and energize the students so that they can relate to it and really start to understand it and not just regurgitate the facts. I'm always referring back to the quote from Alec Peterson, who founded the IB in '68. One of his quotes from 1972 was, the IB aims to, we're aiming for minds well-formed instead of minds well-stuffed, which I think is an absolutely wonderful one. Yeah, minds well-formed, not well-stuffed. So we've got 6 approaches to teaching. Where have you seen these 6 approaches to teaching before? Now, they're in MYP from Principles into Practice. What was the document that contained these 6 that then went into the MYP and now into the DP. This comes from the document from 2012, What is an IB Education?, which defines what IB education looks like across all the programs. So each of our programs has been more explicit about a belief in inquiry. Now, a good question that someone asked me last night, it's all well and good for you to say in the DP, based on inquiry and focused on conceptual understanding. Yes, that sounds good. But what we've got to do in our team is to ensure that the guides, the syllabus contents, and then the assessments reflect this. And this will take some time. You'll see that the guides coming out now and in the next year are becoming far more conceptual. The new history guide really is looking at high-level key concepts, and then schools can interpret those key concepts and teach contextually through the case studies that may be more suitable to them. The new history guide doesn't say, here are 31 wars that you must study, as the last one did. It's saying you must study conflict. The concept is conflict. And you can actually, and you've got to do a compare and contrast conflicts that maybe were about natural resources. So you choose the context that suits your students best. So it's contextual, it's conceptual. And then the internal assessment is an inquiry-based study rather than, what day did it start, what day did it finish. So you'll see that history is an example, global politics is an example, ESS is more so. They're all starting to look a little bit more conceptual. The design of internal assessment is key in terms of promoting inquiry. But another key, and this relates to the student workload piece, is the amount of content. Some of you will say, it's all well and good, we can't do inquiry-based learning when there is so much stuff to get through in 3 semesters. Well, we are now looking at the reduction of content. I just was involved with the film meeting last week. We've taken out quite a large chunk of the film syllabus because it was just too much content. We're looking at mathematics now, but we're reviewing all the mathematics courses. We're almost certainly going to be getting rid of further maths, and we'll go with new courses, completely new, SL, HL, applied maths, SL, HL of pure maths, if you like. The mathematics courses are going to start looking quite different. But one of the main features we've got to do is reduce the amount of content. The mathematics courses will have less content in order to allow a more inquiry-based approach. In order to allow time, because we believe that learning is collaborative, we'll have a Group 5 project, like the Group 4 project. So there's more collaboration. And it doesn't have to be in order to be assessed. It's because mathematics is a joyful experience that should be collaborative. So the approach to teaching, it will take time for them to have an effect across the whole program, but it will come. So how are we doing with the actual project itself? We wrote the guide earlier in 2014. We piloted it in 142 schools, and they gave us a lot of feedback, and we amended the guide, and we've used a lot of the work that they produced to be reformatted, and we'll produce it in other ways later on. And one of the great things we did was we did a lot of filming in schools. We produced 26 videos. So this is what you will see. The guide in PDF is available on the OCC now. Okay, the ATL DP guide was published last Tuesday in PDF on the OCC. It is going to be published in a digital format in the last week of January. In the last week of January, you'll see the guide in digital format. I'll show you what it'll look like in a moment. There'll be 26 videos, unit planners, 3 different templates of unit planner with examples of what they look like. Unit planner, you can amend it, you can change it, you can use your own unit planner. The DP has always said that you must use planners, but what we're actually doing now is saying, well, here's something you can use. Use it if you like, or use your own one. But, we're giving you tools to do what we've always talked about. And these planners are all based on the MYP unit planner. In fact, number 2 of the 3 is the MYP unit planner, with our MYP on it. We've got some case studies that you might find interesting. One of those case studies is the development of self-regulated learners in an online environment. Pomoja was one of our pilot schools. I think the business management kids, in fact. There's a self-reflection tool. As we said, Principles into Practice has a lot more on it. This is approximately what the guide will look like. Different pictures. That's an IB colleague at this end. He certainly won't be on it. That's Paul Campbell. But this is what it will look like. So what you know now as the guide, you can click on it. You can download a PDF version straight from there. You can download sections or just read it. And with each section, you can click on thinking skills, and then the appropriate videos that go with thinking skills will be there. Just click on them. So you don't have to navigate around the OCC. It's all in one place. So you can click on thinking skills. There's the videos that go with it. There's the case study that goes with thinking skills. You go to use informative assessment. There's a section on it. Here's the videos that go with it. Click, click, click. So it should be a nice user-friendly experience. And incidentally, this is what all guides will look like from now on when we publish guides. So the next year we've got ESS coming out and economics. They will look like this. History, this is what they'll look like. You'll have basically a website for history, and then elements of the guide. They won't all have fancy videos, but eventually they will. But the TSM and the guide are effectively in one place. And at the bottom there'll be news items. So, you know, if we're updating a reading list or a film list or something, then it will appear as a news piece on the bottom. So hopefully a better experience for schools. So these are important dates with the ATL materials. Last week of January it all come out. First teaching basically as soon as you like, or in September. Category 3 workshops will be running. SSSs will be going on in ATL, if anyone wants to go to them. And then all the new guides will have explicit ATL guidance. New guides in the digital format will also include completed unit planners and advice on how to teach through the approaches to teaching and approaches to learning. So essentially, we'll be talking about how can you be involved. Hopefully you have a better idea of how you can be involved in terms of curriculum review, in terms of helping us with syllabus comparison and so on. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about the directions we're going in. And finally, where we started, there will be a review of the whole diploma programme, very much how PYP and DP and MYP have looked at the whole programme. We will be doing that. 2015 will be spent listening and just canvassing opinion. We're not going to start changing anything or redesigning. It will take time. We can't do what we did with the MYP and just say, right, stop everything and republish. That won't happen. But we've got to do things like questioning fundamental aspects. Thinking about student well-being, thinking about flexibility of the programme, the length of the programme. E-assessment will come in the diploma. It will. I couldn't tell you if it will be 2019 or 2020, but by about then, it will happen, and there'll be trialling of that. That changes the way you write curriculum. Will there be changes to the way we implement the DP in terms of authorization and evaluation? Will we question concurrency of learning, the anticipated subjects? Do we need to think more about how we cater for more language learning? How we assess a wider range of languages? Do we need to consider the arts, the role of the arts within secondary education? Do we need to consider the role of physical education within the diploma? Is the core fit for purpose? I'm not going to give a plug to other organisations, but you know, if you look at Cambridge Assessment, have the Global Perspectives course, which is very similar to TOK. It's fantastic. The College Board has the AP Seminar course, which is very similar to the extended essay. It's fantastic. So everything that made the diploma unique for so long, others are doing the same kind of things. Are they doing them better? So what makes us unique as we try to develop students and their way of thinking so that they can be successful when they go to university and really make a difference in the world? You know, how can we best do that? Because that's essentially what we want. And of course we need your help. So, there's my email address. Please feel free to email me anytime, anything that you think of that we can do for any aspect of anything I just talked about, whether it's the review of the programme or anything else. Please keep in touch, and hopefully we can work together to take the DP to the next level. And by the way, if you want far more detail from this presentation, I'm assuming it's going to be uploaded on the website after, which you'll see after that point. There's subject-specific So if you want to know what's actually changing in every subject, it's all there. We don't have the time or the willpower to go through all that, but it's there. So when you download it from the public website, it will be there. So thank you very much. Hopefully it still leaves you time to get a coffee before the next session.
Thank you for filling the seats.
Will the idea is what time?